ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930 present The Drive.
Elmore deep, left side three, and good! From 30 feet, John Elmore!
The Drive with Paul Swann.
Welcome into the Thursday edition of The Drive here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. Coming up later on this hour, Chris Gra is going to join us. We're going to talk Marshall soccer with him. But first, we're going to talk fantasy football because we've got football tonight. That's right. Football is back. We'll have all the NFL action all season long right here on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. But first, let's welcome to the program from RotoWire and RotoWire Magazine, Joe Bartle. He's with us now. And Joe, tonight's Christmas, man, Thursday night football. It's back.
I know. Save for the NFL draft, this is one of my favorite times of the year, that very first game, that very first week of the NFL season. There really isn't anything better. You know, by week 14 or 15, it gets to be a little bit of a slog, especially in the fantasy industry. But, man, oh, man, it's week one, it's just something else to get excited about. So
you're a draft guy first, then a game guy as far as your personal Christmas.
Yeah, I love watching all the new talent come in. I like doing the scouting process. Like that whole thing is an exciting deal to me. And there's unlimited potential with those rookies that come in when it comes to the NFL draft. Like, oh, yeah, the Packers are getting so much better with X, Y, and Z that they just drafted, as opposed to what we see in the field. And by week 8 or something, somebody gets hurt. That's the end of your fantasy season as a fan, or even as just your fantasy team. So I love the NFL draft, but I also love week 1 too. Just nothing like getting those first couple of weeks out of the way and getting some NFL football back on the screen.
Now, tonight's the night for a lot of fantasy owners because if they haven't set their lineups and they've got a player who's on the bench that they need to start, or they've got somebody who's inactive, they better start checking everything now because here in a couple hours everything goes live and then you're set.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is the time, and this is go time really when it comes to fantasy. You're looking to get everything set up, especially like matchups where Alshon Jeffrey, we know he's going to be out, but you're kind of watching the waiver wire, so to speak, and also watching the players and their injury statuses heading into these games. There really isn't a lot to talk about for that Thursday game as far as injuries goes. Certainly Sunday, right around that noon time, you got to be really making sure your lineups are set and ready to go as far as who's hurt, who's not, and who will be starting for your lineup.
So let's talk about maybe the few things that still come up around this time as teams are being set. Leagues, pretty much for the most part, are taken care of unless you're playing in a later starting league or a 1-week league. Say, and this was actually an actual question, say you had to miss the draft. You couldn't be at the draft, and so you had to auto-draft. How do you recover from that? Everyone else is drafted. They pick based on what they thought was the best for them, and you let the computer pick for you. How do you recover from that?
That's a tough question. I would be very active on the trade market. I mean, I love trading anyway, whether it comes to real-life fantasy trade or real-life trades in the NFL or fantasy trades. That's one of the things I enjoy the most about the fantasy season. I like being in leagues where that's an option. I've been in plenty of leagues where that's not, where people are pretty they cling to the people that they like, and it's really tough to get those guys, to pry their hands, so to speak, from some of those players. So I would be as active as I could in the trade market. I wouldn't be afraid to give up my first couple picks because more than likely, if you were CPU drafted, so to speak, you're getting guys that don't have a lot of upside and also don't have a lot of depth. So if I had to give up my second or third or fourth round pick to get guys that I like, well, I wouldn't be afraid to do that. At least to be my team, I'd be able to shape it that way. So I would be aggressive in the trade market, and I'd also be aggressive in what I'm offering to prospective teams, and getting maybe even 1 or 2 or 3 guys that I really like or really felt comfortable with. Had I been at the draft, that would be how I'd consider that being a win if I was auto-drafted.
Is there ever a good situation when you auto-draft? And I'll use this as an example. I'm setting up a fantasy hockey league. I've never done fantasy hockey, and it's one of my favorite sports. And one of my coworkers, he's not a sports guy, but he'll play. He'll participate. So we're thinking about setting it up as an auto-draft just to help him at least have a competitive shot at this and try to teach him. Is that, or should you just throw somebody right in and say, no, you need to do this way. You need to go out there and figure out who the best players are for your team?
Oh, I think that there are certain situations where that makes plenty of sense, and I think you described one right there. You're trying to get somebody more involved in the game besides the X's and O's and just watching it. And the fantasy thing, whether it's hockey, football, basketball, baseball, doesn't really matter. That provides a different element because you have people and players that you're specifically keeping an eye on. Even if you're reading the box score of an NFL game or an NHL game, that's still kind of getting more active and involved in the sport. And I think that is the plus if you're going to be saying, hey, I don't know a lot about fantasy football, but I want to do an auto draft. That's the plus to that, is that you can kind of learn and see how the game goes. I actually did a fantasy league the last 2 years with my in-laws, and I can guarantee you absolutely none of them knew anything about fantasy football. But they wanted to know what my job was. Like, hey, well, we'll just do this league for free and for fun. And I think they had a lot of fun. It was a way to get them involved and kind of see the other side of things, too, when it comes to not just watching a Packers game or something like that, but watching the fantasy aspect of it as well. So I think that there are certainly avenues where an auto draft makes a lot of sense. Now, if you were one of 12 people and you couldn't do the draft and everyone else is super into football and knows what they're doing, well, that makes things a little bit more difficult because it's not quite an even playing field. But there are certainly instances where the auto draft is, I think, an acceptable way to do things when it comes to fantasy.
You should do that, if you got a mixed group. Now, if it's just hardcore, say if me, you, and a few other guys who we're hardcore, we know football, never touch the auto draft. But if you're trying to have as many people join just to have a league for fun, auto draft, totally acceptable and probably maybe even preferred because it kind of evens it out a little bit for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it any better.
Maybe I should get a job at RotoWire. No, I'm good. I'm good. You have a complex job, my friend, and I don't know if I'm cut out for the onslaught that is fantasy sports. But staying with draft, what have you got Le'Veon Bell? What do you do?
Oh, yeah.
Where are you going there? You got a situation again with him. So if he's on your team by either you picked him up because you're thinking he's the way to go or auto draft, what do you do?
Man, I mean, that's the $1 million question right now. And we're already week one. Like, we haven't even started week one, and we're already having $1 million questions. Hopefully you were smart enough to grab James Conner, the backup of the Steelers, in lieu of potentially something like this occurring. I will be honest with you that I have Le'Veon Bell in one of my leagues, and I did not do that, and I didn't think I needed to. I wasn't foreseeing any type of contract situation where he could hold out not just a week but multiple weeks. Like that was furthest thing from my mind in terms of fantasy, but also real life. I just didn't think that'd be possible. So if James Conner is available in your free agency wire, you should be picking him up. If you have Le'Veon Bell, if you don't have Le'Veon Bell, you should be picking up James Conner. I think James Conner is actually a really good running back, and he could fit for a lot of lineups. And so long as he's the one playing, I think you're probably getting at least 10 to 15 points of production from him, whether it's a PPR or standard league. Like, he's going to be getting the goal line carries. He's going to get some catches out of the backfield, and he actually has a pretty similar running style to Le'Veon Bell, where I don't think the offensive line is going to have to change too much. So if I'm talking like a FanDuel or DraftKings guy where James Conner is going for $5,000 on FanDuel, I love that quite a bit as a low play too. So just if you could get as many shares as you can of James Conner while Le'Veon Bell's out, go for it. But that's really the only kind of solace I have for you if you are a Le'Veon Bell owner. It's going to be tough, and I have a feeling this is not going to be a one-week thing. It's going to be a multi-week thing where we're dealing about this, whether he does come back and then, quote-unquote sits because he doesn't want to get hurt and that kind of thing. I foresee this being a problem throughout the 2018 season.
That's why 1 week fantasy has taken off, my friend. 1 week has taken off for this.
Yes, daily fantasy. I mean, that's one of the beauties of daily fantasy, and that's what I'm talking about with, like, again, FanDuel. I love to use that site. It's not that I don't like to use DraftKings, but we do have a deal with FanDuel, so I wouldn't be doing my RotoWire justice if I wasn't talking about FanDuel a little bit. But I like how that's all set up, and frankly, you can kind of benefit on some of those things, like James Conner at $5,000 with Le'Veon Bell potentially out. Well, it's a fantastic value at that running back spot, and especially in week one, there's a lot of different values where the formulas haven't quite caught up to what players could produce. I think a guy like John Ross, also under $5,000, he's a fantastic gamble for me if I'm looking for a flex or wide receiver spot. Those are just two guys that are pretty low price, but probably I feel comfortable gambling with and putting them into my lineup, and hopefully one of them goes off and you're kind of set because you have a guy that's going for 2 to 3 times his value, and that's really what you're looking for when it comes to daily fantasy.
Joining us from RotoWire.com and RotoWire Magazine, he is their go-to expert I'm just going to go ahead and promote you against everybody else. You're the expert there, Joe Bartle. I mean, you're my guest, so that makes you the expert.
That's cool. I'll take that. Probably not. I have plenty of fantastic colleagues at RotoWire, and I encourage you to certainly seek them out on Twitter and also on the RotoWire Twitter account itself. But yeah, hey, I'm your guest, so I'm your man. I'm the best. We can roll with that every week. I'm fine with that.
Exactly. So you specialize in football, but RotoWire, it's not just a football site, even though, again, everyone thinks football for fantasy, but there's baseball experts there. There's hockey experts, which I'll probably be seeking out soon, or at least be following those guys on Twitter. So if you subscribe to RotoWire, you're not just getting football, you're getting everything if you like playing fantasy sports.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, we cover cricket. I mean, we go all over the realm of possibilities and all over the world when it comes to different fantasy sports. There's so many different things that we have kind of down. Like you were talking about hockey, AJ Scholz, Scholz. I'm spelling his name out because he's the guy to follow when it comes to RotoWire hockey, but fantasy hockey in general. I don't think there's a guy that's better. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not like a huge hockey fan. I follow sparingly, and I'm not super into fantasy hockey. But anytime I hear him talking about fantasy, or he's doing notes for the site or something like that, he's always the guy on top of stuff. So I love that there's just a guy. Like I could point to any single guy at RotoWire, and I feel confident saying he is one of the best or one of the most premier colleagues in the fantasy industry at that respective sport. I just, I work here. I'm not trying to toot anyone's horn too much, but I really feel confident saying that RotoWire provides just about anything you need in terms of any sort of sport that you're interested in.
I might need his email because, again, even though we're going to auto draft in hockey, after the auto draft, everybody's on their own.
I'll gladly provide it. I mean, he would be glad to help you. That's the thing. Like most of the guys on RotoWire Twitter will be glad to take your questions. I have 4 or 5 people that it's almost like clockwork getting tweeted around Thursday or Friday. Hey, what should I do with this lineup? Hey, what should I do with this? And, I'm not the only one that does that. I think there's a lot of guys that are really approachable when it comes to their lineups and are willing to help you out and listen and kind of talk through some of the stuff. And to me, especially if you're kind of learning the industry and learning how fantasy sports works, it's great to have somebody that's willing to give you a helping hand and take some time out of your day to kind of walk through all that stuff.
Okay, so if I send you an invite for some different email accounts to some different leagues, you'll co-manage teams, right? Is that the deal I'm hearing?
Oh boy, I don't know about that. My slate is pretty full when it comes to fantasy football leagues. I might have to grease the wheels a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit of under the table action that I might be able to help you out a little bit more with that.
Fair enough. And you're using all sorts of sites. Of course, RotoWire is partnered with a lot of sites. So you've got ESPN, you've got Yahoo for hockey. Of course, you're with some of the other networks as well. If you're just starting out, just wanting to get into it, if you're going to choose between the big two, ESPN and Yahoo, just for the weekly fantasy, where do you send people?
I think I would go ESPN. It's a little clutter is not the right word, but there's a little bit less going on with the ESPN site when you have your lineup all set up. When you're looking at your roster, and frankly, if you're just kind of starting out, that's all you really need to know. You just click on the player. Oh, there's a lot to it. I'll read what it has to say about that. Oh, hey, I think I know that guy. The RotoWire guys do that. That's okay, cool. I got that. It's pretty easy to read through and understand. And to me, that's really all I'm looking for, especially when I'm starting out. Like Yahoo has a couple of things that I appreciate, like the drafting grades and the weekly scoring. It frustrates me most times when I play on Yahoo, but hey, if you would have had this lineup against your 10 other opponents, how many times would you have won? And like that is an offer on ESPN, and probably it's a good thing because most times it's like, oh, you would have beat everybody else this week, and that happens more often than I can count. So I appreciate what ESPN has as far as the simplicity goes, and especially when you're starting out, that would be the kind of site that I would target newer people to go to. Okay, so I've just torpedoed the one guy who's never played fantasy hockey before. I've just torpedoed him in Yahoo. Well, hey, he'll learn from you, and he can learn from the experts on RotoWire, and he'll be able to overcome that maybe minuscule difference that would be between ESPN and Yahoo. There you go. I like it. Joining us from RotoWire.com and RotoWire Magazine, Joe Bartle. And Joe, if fans want to find out more, they can go to RotoWire.com, and you guys are always offering special deals to make sure that fans find out what RotoWire has to offer before committing, and once they get in and find out everything, pretty much they usually commit, right? Yeah, and I should really have this down every time I do one of these phone calls, but you actually can have a 10-day free trial to the RotoWire site itself, and it's all access. You can see everything on there, and if I had the link, I should. Maybe I'll tweet out after this broadcast is done, but it's a 10-day free trial. After that, there's no credit card entered, so you don't have to be worried about being billed or anything like that. And if you do find value in RotoWire and you like the site, but maybe you don't want to know about fantasy baseball or fantasy basketball, you can buy specific packages that are a little bit cheaper that just direct you to the football or hockey or whatever else it might be that you're interested in. So that was a new change, I think, that we incorporated kind of towards the end of last year. It really has been, from everything I've heard from other users, they really appreciate that and it really seems to go over well. So that's just another one of the many ways that they're trying to accommodate you as far as your wallet, but also your fantasy knowledge too.
Joe, good catching up with you. We'll do it again next week, and we'll find out how people did on Week 1 and how to correct all those Week 1 missteps.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys have any questions, listeners have any questions, feel free to tweet me at JB Fantasy Sports. I'll be glad to answer your questions when I have some time.
Joe, good talking to you. We'll do it again next week. Thank you, sir.
Yes, no problem. See you then.
That is Joe Bartle from RotoWire.com and RotoWire Magazine. We're going to take our first break, come back later on. Chris Gra is going to join us. Marshall Soccer's got a big one coming up against FIU. Dave Walsh is in studio as well. He gets to talk a little bit Marshall football. I didn't want to throw fantasy football at him, so he was barred from the fantasy football interview. And I'm going to bar you from soccer as well, just because you're a football guy. More on the way. It's The Drive, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Now, back to The Drive with Paul Swann on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
Still to come, Chris Gra, Marshall Soccer. Big one coming up for the Thundering Herd, and he'll be with us in a few minutes to preview that. We'll take your phone calls later on. We've got Marshall and Eastern Kentucky coming up on Saturday. Previewing that one with me is the former quarterback of the Young Thundering Herd, Dave Walsh. And I'm looking at this Eastern Kentucky team and thinking, are they really better than maybe I think they are, or was Moorhead just that bad? It's still too early to tell because Moorhead's not that good of a team, and EKU looked like world beaters at times against them.
And then you're reading down the roster of EKU. Some players where they came from to play at Eastern Kentucky, you're going like, whoa, I can understand why they did that to Moorhead. But this will be a different occasion this week. And again, like last week with the rivals, Marshall Eastern, pretty good games over the years, the 1AA days. Marshall had the better of it towards the end. Be very interesting. And I know Doc and the gang have said, hey, nobody's like, just because they're 1AA or FCS, whatever we want to call them, we're taking them seriously because it's the next game up and we can't avoid any bumps in the road. And Eastern would love to come in and be one of those FCSs to upset the apple cart like 4 teams did last week across the country, one of them being in our league.
They've played FCS schools and they've won consistently. They haven't won a national championship in a long time, but when they move up and they play the FBS teams, they're 7-27. Their last win over Miami of Ohio in 2014 almost beat Kentucky. So that's the one that they're hoping and wishing that, all right, we didn't get that one, but let's get Marshall. Let's not have another one of those where we almost get one of these guys. And I'm sure they're going to be pretty fired up knowing that, yeah, we've been competitive. If we can get Kentucky or almost get them, we should be able to get Marshall. Maybe that's the mentality from their standpoint.
Exactly. Coming close in those situations doesn't do them well. They don't think that way. They want to win the ball game. And, close call with Kentucky, no. Here comes Marshall. We have a chance. We've played in the past. And, it's one of those things, if you want to make your season, this is kind of a week to do it. And then on the flip side, Marshall does not want to be the one at the expense of that happening. So it's going to be volatile on both sides. Short trip down I-64 for the game. It'll be fun to watch. But I think right now, thinking at one point in time these teams were on the same playing field, Marshall's kind of elevated a little bit, and I'm thinking what they have right now may be a bit too much for the Colonels when you go over 60 minutes. Maybe not one series or two, but over 60 minutes, it'll take its toll.
Well, if you remember, I learned this yesterday. Remember, they were a candidate for the Sun Belt, but Coastal Carolina got that spot, and there was a push to move them possibly to FBS. unfortunately didn't happen. Finances have been an issue across the state of Kentucky. There's been funding cuts as well that's hit them. They're not necessarily flush with cash to make the move up, and they had an opportunity. At one point, they probably had a window that they should have taken to go and make the next step. I mean, I know they're doing some improvements to their facility, their stadium. They're kind of finally finishing that thing out. If you go to Eastern Kentucky, you look at it, it's like there's half a stadium and some bleachers.
Right.
And they're finishing that out a little bit, not necessarily a brand new full-size grandstand, but they're still doing some things over there, and they're leaving themselves some room to expand in the future. There is a desire, just maybe they don't have what they need to make that happen, and I don't think they're going to make that move anytime soon, if ever, really.
All about resources, as you mentioned, and I remember not long ago the days of Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Marshall all 1AA situations, and then all of a sudden Marshall decides to make the move. Western made the move, and things have worked out reasonably well. And I'm sure Eastern saw a window, but then it closed. And right now, with money talks, and if it's not there, you got to be careful what you do. So they're going to have to, I won't say languish there, but play there. They have, there's still some good schools that they compete against, but I'm sure they'd like to be in with the big boys, so to speak. And that ship may have sailed, but you never say never. But it's going to be hard because 20 minutes away, University of Kentucky. You got to be careful. How do you draw? Big thing is how many people are in the seats to help pay the bills.
I think they've got a fan base.
Yeah.
They've got a fan base, and if Western Kentucky can thrive and other teams can thrive, I think they could thrive as well. But really, it's a resource issue. Where do we find the funding? And they're not going to be playing the Kentuckys of the world. They're going to be playing the Western Kentuckys of the world, Middle Tennessees of the world. There would be some natural geographic logic to them being a Division I opponent for a Marshall, a Middle, a Western. There are some opportunities there. Unfortunately, they just didn't have a chance to take that opportunity. The way Marshall jumped and basically said, all right, we are on top of the world here right now. We've got an opportunity. Let's take it. They could have stayed back and been a 1AA powerhouse for years to come, or make the leap, and you saw what happened. They were able to come in and be competitive in the MAC right away.
Very well. So far, so good for them, so we'll see what happens.
We're going to take our next break, come back. Chris Gra is going to join me. We're going to talk soccer with him here on The Drive, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I know we're talking about Marshall football, but there's a bigger matchup coming up. Maybe not the Marshall-Eastern Kentucky matchup, no. Marshall men's soccer team returning home. They're going to start Conference USA action. They've got the defending regular season conference champions, the FIU Panthers, coming in on Friday to join us now on the program to tell us more about what's coming up is the head coach of the Marshall soccer team, Chris Gra. And, Coach, this is a big one. I mean, it's your opener conference, but at the same time, this is a big one because it's FIU.
Yeah, it's a big game for us. We're very excited about it. Very excited to have FIU in town. With them being the reigning champs, so we kind of want to beat the champ to be the champ. So it's going to be a great matchup. We're probably the only two teams that play really possession-oriented soccer inside the Conference USA. So we kind of want to have a battle to see who's the best of that genre of play. So it's a lot riding on the line. Plus they've had a bad start, so they're going to want to make their bones on off field, and we don't want to allow them to do that. So a lot of different storylines going into this one.
Yeah, you've been pretty successful as of late. Right now, you're 2-1-1. A big win against Ohio State, and even though it was a draw, it was a pretty impressive performance against Dayton. How are you feeling right now about where you're at this season? And honestly, put it in perspective. Beating Ohio State, coming close to taking out Dayton, I mean, that's a lot of improvement from year to year, I would think.
Yeah, we definitely improved. We're a lot more solid than we were last year. The guys have gelled really well defensively. We had a blip against Auckland where we sort of dominated the match, and then just kind of, guys getting used to the college grind of, 2 games in such a short space of time, and just kind of switching off mentally, and thinking we had the game won at 1. So we kind of learned that lesson the hard way. And then Ohio State was a fantastic result for us. We were the better team on the day, probably the better team, personnel-wise, and so we played the better soccer, and won the game and fought hard. And then Dayton was, another one of those second game on a weekend, type scenarios where we defended really well, but we created all the best scoring chances. We kind of had a run of the play for large portions of the game, and the guys just never looked like conceding. We could have played for 3 days, but we would have not conceded. So it was just trying to get the goals to fall, and we could use, goals coming from for a number 9 position would be great, but we're going to have to get some guys stepping up now, and we're creating 4 or 5 really good scoring chances every game, and we need to start burying a couple of those if we want to really make that next step. But massive improvement from last year, just in terms of how we open the game, how we dominate the game, and how we control the ball a little bit. So it's been a big improvement.
I think something else, again, a lot of people maybe don't realize this, but you're in Conference USA, and in soccer, you're in a power to some. It's not surprising to see a Conference USA team go up and beat an Ohio State because, well, on the pitch to them, maybe sometimes even better as far as conference standings.
Yeah, that's the way we want to keep it. But yeah, Conference USA, it's sort of that in men's soccer. It's a top 5 conference. We're looking at guys, teams like Charlotte, New Mexico, recent runs to the Final Four. Always have, I guess the average is about 4 teams go to the NCAA tournament. 4 out of the 9 teams go to the NCAA tournament every year. So it really is kind of up there with the Big East and the Big Ten, and in terms of college soccer. So we have those tough competitive matches. And so when we do play in Ohio State, we're not overawed too much. When we go against Ohio State and the Virginias of the world that we'll pick up on the schedule this year. So I think the conference gives us really good preparation for playing some of those bigger teams for sure.
What's the status of your keeper? I know he's probably gotten bored back there because he hasn't really got that much work, or let's put it this way, he's been making sure that he hasn't had to work much because he kept you clean the last couple of games, and that's really nice to know that you've got someone back there that can keep you in these games, even if you're not able to score as fast as you like to. Yeah,
I think Paolo's been tremendous. Between him and Ben, it was kind of neck and neck going right into the season, and we kind of went with Paolo, but Paolo's become such a big.
Sounds like we've lost Coach. We're going to try to get him back, and he was talking, of course, about the upcoming matchup, Marshall taking on FIU, and we're going to try to get him back here in just a moment as Marshall in action on Friday. You can, of course, catch that game on CUSA TV. Also, the student station is going to have the broadcast on 88.1 FM WMUL. Marshall soccer is really, I think, if you've seen the last few years, this is probably going to be the sport at Marshall where, again, you're going to see a lot of growth. You've got football, basketball, your upper-tier sports, but I think the potential there really is there for this program. And joining us back on the program now, Marshall University soccer coach Chris Gra. Sorry about that, Coach. We lost you there, but I guess when you got an exciting match to talk about, sometimes the phone just doesn't want to cooperate.
I guess not.
But you were talking about your keeper and how there was a battle, and finally you made the decision to go with Paulo, and it seems to have paid off for you so far.
Yeah, and it's more of the intangibles with Paulo as well. I mean, he's a great shot stopper. He's sort of a beast back there, but in the locker room, he's the guy that's grabbing everybody together and kind of inspiring them and yelling at them and getting everybody going. He's kind of become that sort of leader off the field and guy who's taken on upon himself to motivate everybody, and he's an absolute born winner, and that's just giving the team in front of him confidence, and he's just grown and grown and grown into the role, into the position. So he's been fantastic. I've got absolutely zero complaints about everything he's been doing so far, and he's really a Big Ten kid with potentially a professional future in front of him as he carries on this way. With the match against FIU, and the record's maybe not an indicator of what this team really is. So you circle this. This is a big match. How focused are you and your squad right now, knowing that, sure, they're 0-3, but
if Marshall soccer beats FIU and then can go on and have a successful season, and you might look at this game back months from now and think, okay, this is where it started in conference, knowing that we could get past an FIU.
Yeah, I mean, our guys are, they're very, very focused, and nobody could really give a care about their record. I think you look at what they did to us last year. They beat us 4-0 at their place. It was our worst performance. The guys who are still around from last year, just, that game was just a terrible performance, terrible atmosphere. So they want revenge for that. They want to show they're better than that. They're the reigning champs, and we've set our sights this year on trying to win the championship, trying to win Conference USA. And so that we know, to be the best, you've got to beat the best. So the focus is there in the guys. You can see today training. You can see it with the enthusiasm for it. It was at the forefront of everybody's minds today, and they know it's a big game. And they could care less about the record. They could, they want to beat FIU because FIU were the champs, and they want to prove themselves and start putting Marshall up there at the top of the conference table. And we want to get up there and we want to stay there. That's kind of the mentality everybody's got. So everybody's seen it as a big game. They've got two really good players in Patino and Lindsay, who were both Herman watch list guys. They're the real deal. Despite their record, and we know we can play at that level and we can win those games. So we want to start doing that now. And I think all the guys know it's a great opportunity for us to really make our mark this season.
Now, if you have a successful season, you get this team in the NCAA, and then you win. I'm just going to say this now. I think you should ask for a new scoreboard. That seems to be the reward this time of year for getting into the NCAA tournament. I mean, Danny got a new scoreboard. I'm thinking soccer gets back to lofty heights, gets into the NCAA tournament. You might want to make a case for a new scoreboard, Coach.
Well, we're going to try and burn out the home score light bulbs anyway, so maybe we'll need a new one at the end of the season. Yeah, it is a beautiful scoreboard. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. It's not a light bright by any stretch. It's pretty brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, if we make the tournament, you never know. I mean, I think there's, it's always looking to improve, always looking to grow in every area and get better. And I think I take a new centre forward, a brand new, goal scoring machine over a scoreboard. But scoreboard would be nice as well.
You can have both. You get into the NCAA tournament, you can have both. Just
fantastic. I'll tell him you told me.
Yes, please tell him that I told you that. I can't wait to hear the response to that. Coach, I'm excited for you. It's going to be big time coming up on Friday. Let's hope we get a big crowd coming out. And there's going to be plenty of time for everyone to come out and support you. And then I know high school football Friday night is big in the area, but still plenty of time for people to come out and support you and then go out and support the area high school kids.
Yeah, we've got it's West Virginia Club Night. So if you come in from a club team, a youth club team, wear your club jersey, and you get in for free, and your parents are only $2 to get in. So we're trying to get a lot of the local kids out to see some great soccer. And it really is two teams that play the game, the way we believe it should be played, with trying to control the ball and possess the ball, and mostly just lumping and chasing. So we hope we can be a great example for the game there. And it's, like I said, free for all kids wearing their club jerseys.
Coach, good luck. We'll have you back on soon, and I'm excited. This is going to be a big one coming up on Friday, 7 o'clock, Field. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. That's
the head coach of the Marshall soccer team. We'll turn our attention back to Marshall football when we continue on this edition of The Drive, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. Welcome back. It is The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. I'm your host, Paul Swann. Dave Walsh with me. Our producer tonight is Gabriel Sellards. We'll take your phone calls at 877-420-TALK, 877-420-8255. What are you laughing for? What are you laughing about?
I'm still thinking of your first segment, the fantasy football.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I remember the days we had in the league, and you draft, and you think, what did you do? And then you'd go win, and you'd lose, and it was crazy. All the things you've read about, I did that. It is crazy. It is fun, and it can get very intense.
I like the Yahoo fantasy setup because I'll get a report, and it's well crafted. It's an auto-generated story. It's a robo story. The computers that are putting people like you out of your profession.
Yes.
I mean, one day one day there's going to be a robo machine that's going to replace a Tim Stevens.
Right.
You just punch some stats in, and it's going to spit out a story.
Yeah, be a robot at the game, touchdown, Fairland, and he'll do it, and like that, and then that's it.
That's what's going to happen one day.
It's coming.
It's going to happen one day. You're going to input the stats from Marshall football because you got to keep the stats.
Right.
Somebody's got to keep the stats. So the stat man's job isn't out of is not going to be taken yet. Going to punch those stats into the stat service, drive everything, and then Robo Walsh is going to spit out a story.
Right. And I don't know what kind of voice it would be, but I'm sure it'd be appealing, so to speak.
AP does that already for a lot of those financial reports that come out. They do use it a lot for their financial stories, earnings and everything like that, because it takes time to wade through all that. So they let the machine do it, and it does a pretty good job. But there's still people checking it. But that's going to be the future here.
It's coming. Like the other day, I was at a store, and you see all these checkout lines. We get there, and I went, they're all automated. There's like 5 bodies to take you through, but other than that, it's just you go through and wave in front of a machine and go out. And I'm going like, it saves money, and you have an IT guy that can fix some things, and away. Welcome to, like you said, that's the wave. That's what's coming.
But I still marvel at it because a fantasy football game against fantasy teams, this is fictional. This is make-believe football we're talking about here, even though it's fun.
Yeah.
And with Yahoo, I get a game story. I mean, not a game story. Analytics and everything. What's the difference of just punching that stuff in and then you get a game story for Marshall? And I'm sure I've already piqued someone's interest right now thinking, hey, you know what? We could do that. Just punch out the numbers and here it is, a game story.
Somebody's probably working on it already. I mean, I'm glad I'm at the point that there. And, Paulie, I hope you can make it through before that day comes. And they slide you to the side, but I think we're fine right now. But somebody is working on it.
I think I'm good.
Yes.
Robo opinions can't be generated.
No. You got to have a live warm body at some point, because if something wants to talk good, bad, or indifferent, do you want to talk to a robot or a computer? No.
Yeah, see,
I want a live body.
It's not happening anytime soon. So we're in good shape.
Yes.
So Thundering Herd coming up on Saturday, taking on Eastern Kentucky. And this one's still hard to break down because you look at Eastern Kentucky, you see, 404 rushing yards, but that was against a suspect defense. All right, 160 yards passing, but Moorhead was kind of suspect as well. They score 49 points. Again, suspect. 23 points against. Moorhead's not that good. Marshall, on the other hand, 171 rushing yards, but well earned. And they scored 35 points. 35 points, 171 rushing yards. The story, of course, is Isaiah Green with 272 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. He's the story. And you don't know how to really quantify this because come Saturday, you're going to see Marshall bigger, faster, and that's probably going to be the key, Dave.
Yeah, bigger,
Marshall's
faster.
speed is going to be the difference here between these two.
And then some depth issues. 1AA days, you had 60 to 65 scholarships here, you're 80 in the 80s. So if Eastern goes to a number 2 or 3 guy, there might be a drop-off as opposed to, we saw with Marshall, not much drop-off from 1s to 2s to 3s. Doc's worked to get that where it is today. And right now I'm thinking if there's a more popular man in Huntington than Isaiah Green, I don't know who he is. A lot of people are waiting to see him live in person on Saturday. It was, fall camp, spring ball was one thing, but now they're going to see it when there's nobody pulling him off. He has no red jersey on. It's like, let's see what he's got.
I'll tell you some guys who are maybe as popular, if not more. Tyree Brady.
Right. Brady. Man draws a crowd. As Doc is on my side, I'm glad he's catching for me. I do not have to defend him. Would not be easy.
Keon Davis.
Right. Miami loves him.
Tyler King.
Mr. Speedster. I mean, he didn't even play last year early on, and now he's like Mr. Zippo. Plus, don't kick the ball to him. You may pay.
See, I had to put a separate column for him in because I'm looking at team leaders right now. Keon Davis has got 76 yards, 1 touchdown, but I got to talk about Tyler King.
Yeah.
67 yards, no touchdowns. So he earned himself a whole column by himself on my prep sheet.
Right. That punt return that set up a touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, took it right up a lot of times where the hole is, up the middle. No flags. sets up a touchdown and end up being deciding points. So, be careful kicking the ball. It might be one of these things where a team decides, hey, we're going to kick it away from him. Kick it left, kick it right. And the coaches will tell the kicker, do not, whatever you do, kick it to him.
Conference USA Saturday setting up to be interesting. Of course, our game is 6:30. Air Force is at Florida Atlantic. Does the Lane train put itself back on the tracks against Air Force?
I think they got a better chance to get back on track. I mean, they've been living hard since. Some reading material about that game. Lane's been living pretty hard since that trip to Norman last week.
I'm sure. Appalachian State will come in and probably beat Charlotte.
That's a team that we'll see, shortly. We used to see quite a bit, and they are a very good football team. The other Mountaineers.
Yeah, I'm taking Louisiana Tech over Southern.
I think Louisiana Tech's going to be a team to watch on the West, along with Mr. North Texas.
I'll take Middle over UT Martin.
Yes.
I'll take Southern Miss over Louisiana Monroe.
Yes.
I will take UAB over Coastal Carolina.
I would too, because they're still on the buzz of almost giving up football. They're back. Everybody's back from an 8-win season and a bowl trip. So, yes.
I will take Baylor over UTSA.
It'll be an interesting game. After last week, I don't know. Baylor's got to think, well, if we're going to get one, better get it now because we get to the league. I don't know.
I'll take Baylor.
Yes.
FIU, I'll take them over Old Dominion.
Yes, Old Dominion's still stunned after what happened in Lynchburg last week.
I will take North Texas over Incarnate Word.
Is that a single game or a doubleheader?
No,
Texas.
They're taking on Incarnate and Word at the same time.
That's one of those where the 2s, 3s, and 4s get a lot of field time this week.
I will also take Western Kentucky over Mighty Maine.
Yes.
I don't know. I haven't seen that much on UTEP or UNLV. I really didn't glance over too much over last week on them. So
I'd almost have to take UNLV because UTEP
it's at UNLV too.
It's just they're in disarray right now.
Rice is at Hawaii, thus Hawaii wins.
Right, but nice road trip. They're probably already there.
I
would have left early.
That's a plane trip. It's a boat trip. Probably a helicopter trip.
All kinds of trips.
Canoe trip. Raft trip.
Yes. Sightseeing
parasailing trip.
Yeah, and at some point in time, you got to put uniform on.
Beach trip. That's a trip, all right.
Sounds like you're trying to get that one scheduled up here in Huntington at one point in time.
Well, no.
We would stow away on the plane for that
Jerry Palm's already got that scheduled.
Oh, I read that.
Yeah, the bowl game.
You've already booked it.
Mike Kurtner, ask Mr. Hamrick about playing a bowl game in Hawaii if you're listening, sir. Jerry Palm's already got that scheduled, so we'll see what Mr. Hamrick thinks about that. By the way, the most important radio ever is coming up next. For the next hour, you can hear Mike Kurtner grill the athletic director, Marshall University, Mike Hamrick, and then you can hear the athletic director grill right back. And you can phone in as well. So if you've got questions, don't be asking them on Twitter and just hope he answers. Call in. Voice your question to him. He'll take it. That's coming up here in a few short minutes. For producer Gabriel Sellards, for Dave Walsh, I'm Paul Swann. This is The Drive on ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930.
WRBC Huntington, W227BS Huntington, ESPN 94.1 FM and AM 930. Huntington Sports Station.